Okay, good morning. It's wonderful to have Kallie Schoeman here with us. And yes, tell us about
For those
Kallie
that don't
Schoeman.
know.
I'm a born farmer, and the name Karel means the tiller of the land. So I never had an option. The only thing I wanted to do was to farm. And I've been, by the 14th of November this year, I'll be farming for 50 years. And I'm the third generation Schoemans in Schoeman Brodie. My son is the fourth generation. So we are a generational farming business. And we farm in Delmas, that's in the Highveld, with soybeans and maize. And in Groblersdal, that is where our citrus operation is. And then in Hopetown, in the Northern Cape, next to the Orange River, we farm with winter wheat, summer maize, export lucerne, and of course pecan nuts. And then we also have got a contract for baked beans and tomato sauce with two of the famous brands. So we've got contract farmers that produce the small white beans that they deliver to our plant in Delmas, and then it get prepared and sorted for canning grade, and then that goes to the big canners, and that's actually an opportunity for us to have a joint venture with 150 farmers in 4 provinces, and they plant like 12,000 hectares of small white beans for us and deliver it there. And eventually, when you eat, I'm not going to name the brand, but if you turn it around, you can say ook. So,
Love it.
and so if you can have baked beans and tomato sauce at least 3 times a week, your chance for colon cancer gets reduced by 50%. So please support the bean growers.
Okay.
Goodness gracious, well, you've certainly taught me something. Yes, I think ek gaan ook eet daarvan. So, but also what you were saying, I mean, so often farmers get told to diversify. It sounds to me like you've really diversified. Where did you start?
Well, I mean, it was my grandfather started,
Yeah.
and he was a pioneer for permanent crops, and especially for grapes in the summer rainfall area.
Okay.
And he was the first guy that planted table grapes in Groblersdal. So
Okay.
he discovered that's not the ideal area for grapes, because it rains in the summer and you get hail in the summer. So he was advocating for research for all sorts of winter rainfall crops like peaches and plums and apples and pears and grapes. So that was where the Roodeplaat Research Station actually came from. And he was the opening speaker at the opening of the Roodeplaat Research Station. So that is where it all started. And then, of course, I believe that you must have grain in your food basket.
Okay.
It's a commodity that people need every day of their lives. That's why you can't live without bread, and you can't produce red meat, chicken, eggs, milk, and dairy products without maize and soybeans, because the maize is your energy source and the soybeans is a protein source. So I also believe that to be diversified is to catch the ups and downs, because our
Yes.
industry is known for its cycles. And we went through a very difficult patch with citrus in the last 3 years, especially after COVID. And we've had that tremendous increase of logistical costs. And I think in that year, not many citrus farmers made a profit. And so in those days, the diversification helped us quite a lot, and especially as far as grain is concerned. And about 7 billion people now needs a farmer 3 times a day.
Yep, for sure. So it's quite a broad spectrum, and it's all around the country. You must have quite an organization to put this all together.
Yeah, that's true. I always say that we are in the people business. So that's very important to have the right teams, to have the right competent people working for you, to have the people that actually buys into your family business's vision and mission and values. As long as you've got that, you can start to work with an organization. And it's a very important part of my role as the MD of the company, to be a proper leader in terms of the people that are in the field doing their job every day, and for them to be motivated and to feel that they are also making a difference in terms of food security and job creation and the overall well-being of the people in the platteland.
So I've got a question. With you being so diversified, a lot of times you go to areas like the X River Valley and everybody's just got table grapes. What advice would you have for somebody like that want to diversify but they're not sure how to do it?
Okay, my first reaction would be, if you're in table grapes or in whatever commodity, try to integrate into the value chain. So the buzzword nowadays is from
Farm to fork.
Farm to fork. And how can you actually integrate into the value chain so that you can get involved and where you can actually have a share of the potential profits, or even if you can reduce your cost in that total value chain. I think that's the first thing that can secure your business. The second thing is, and then if it's add on, like what else can you do with a grape or an orange or a maize or soybeans or small white beans to add value to it? I mean, that's the second potential. And then thirdly, you must first of all know your love. What really makes you kick when you wake up in the morning? For me, for instance, it's not table grapes, but it will be all sorts of grains and citrus and nuts and that sort of thing. So what you really love is what you should think of if you would like to diversify. And then you can look at different areas and I think it's a long-term investment. So you've got to think of what are the scarce resources and what will be the limiting resources going forward. So, for instance, I've decided I'm never going to buy some land without water. So I would rather buy water with a land connected to that. And that's the reason why our company farms next to the Orange River in the Northern Cape.
It makes sense.
I have a question about that, and that is one of the more recent farming operations. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the land and the water, and you're farming with, amongst other things, nuts. So that's is that at all connected to people's drive for plant proteins? There's a demand for the people that are trying to go off animal products and they're eating nuts as protein from vegetable products. I mean from plant products.
Yeah.
So that seems to be booming internationally, the demand for nuts. How do you see that in South Africa, and was this part of what made you expand in that direction?
The prerequisite is you must personally become a little bit nuts.
Yes.
And that was not difficult because I was on my way there in any case. So yes, there's definitely a demand for plant-based proteins, and that's where the crave for nuts comes from. And secondly, there is I think the fact that you can produce, like for instance, pecan nuts with very, very limited chemical intervention. So going into the organic route, using less chemicals and becoming more, I think also your carbon footprint in terms of what you need to produce pecan nuts is much reduced compared to other sorts of nuts, and the fact that you don't need to spray, you farm in the right area, and the market is actually very, very, very huge. South Africa produce 28,000 tons of pecan nuts, which is not much. And the Chinese, during the Moon Festival, consumes that 28,000 tons over a long weekend. So there's a tremendous market for expansion. But it is also, I think you just fill that basket in terms of protein, and that is where the future lies in terms of protein.
So going nuts is to be recommended.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
something that's quite interesting, you said you've got export lucerne, which is, if you speak to somebody, they might think lucerne, okay, you've got it for your cattle or for the dairy or to sell to horse farmers, but there's not many people that export their lucerne. Am I correct in saying that or not?
Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, we must try to imagine the size of a country like China. What is it, 1.3 billion people, and their milk consumption is tremendous. So they've started with commercial dairy herds, where they actually farm with him like in multi-story buildings with 30,000
Wow.
cows, and they need to have protein and a natural source of protein, and that is where the lucerne comes from. So they became a very big importer of lucerne, and South Africa has got the right type of climate, especially in the Northern Cape. We don't get rain after you've cut the lucerne, so they need a very, very high quality of lucerne. So just to think about it, you bale it into a 900 kilogram bale. It travels all the way from Hope Town to Durban Port, and then it gets containerized and it's sent all the way to China to feed their cows to produce milk and dairy products. So that is exactly how integrated the world became in terms of food production.
Incredible. And those cows, your milk is being produced on the third floor. It's just like unbelievable.
In the
Wow.
third floor, and everything is computerized, and they've got all sorts of detectors on them telling what the temperature is and whatever if the cow is in a good condition. So it's really very scientific.
Now, that protocol with China was only signed like 3 years ago. I think it was 2021.
For export of lucerne.
For export to lucerne to China. So how quickly after that protocol was signed did you get into that market?
Well, it was basically immediately. We got into this lucerne producing venture in 22.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but we've got export agency that does that for us, and also our the pecan nuts, because that's part of the value chain that we don't want to touch at this stage, because it's really, you've got to specialize, you've got to have the volume, you've got to have the right shippers and people in the logistic chain.
Wow, very interesting.
I've got a broader question, and I think you're quite well situated to answer that. With all the different departments that you've got and divisions you've got across the country, the value of agriculture, not just to feed our country's people, but to employ them. I mean, agriculture is so important to our platteland. What can you tell us about that? What comment do you have on that?
There's a lot to say about job creation in the agricultural sector. You know, unfortunately, our minimum wage has been increased to levels where the productivity did not keep up with the cost of the labor, and unfortunately, worldwide, mechanization has become the norm. And the next phase, going into the electronic era, is robotization.
Yeah.
It's coming and it's here already. So we see that we often, let's take for instance, just the when we shake the pecan nut trees and the nuts fell on the ground and you pick up by hand, and we compare that to the mechanized process. It is cheaper to mechanize. So it's not good for job creation, and so all of us in the rural areas are trying to do something, and especially Schoeman Brodie, to see what we can do in order to do job creation, but also to stimulate the local population to care for themselves. And therefore, we've got a few programs, and I can tell you more about that.
Well, please do tell us more about that. So you were saying that there are people that you said you would like to tell us a little bit more about that. I know that Schoeman Boerdery is quite involved in empowering and uplifting people in the platteland areas. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes, Louise, I think the one project that we're quite proud on is to establish small-scale farmers. They don't want to be called emerging, so we call them new era farmers. Who are already in agriculture. They've got a piece of land, they do plant maize, soybeans, they have got cattle, they are a bit diversified, they've got the mechanization. So we encourage them to start to plant small white beans for us. So we call that program Zamukele, and it means like when you come and visit me and you knock on the door, I will say Zamukele, you are free and welcome to come in.
Okay.
So subsequently, we've got 42 farmers that produce small white beans for us. So they are organized in certain areas in the summer rainfall areas, where they form their own study groups, and we've got 2 extension officers that visit them and coach them and help them to be ready for the planting season. Have they got their fertilizer? Do they have their seed? Do they have their diesel? And then afterwards to go and help them with the plant health, with foliar sprays, etc., and then eventually to harvest their beans and they bring it to the plant in Delmas. So what they've got, first of all, is market access. So they know they've got a market, and their beans will eventually become baked beans and tomato sauce. And secondly, they get a fixed price. Before they plant, they know what the price is. So that helps them a lot. The third thing is we provide the certified seed on a loan basis, so they don't have to pay for it. They get subtracted at the end of the season, and they can make use of our fertilizer program from our company Trifert. So that is one of the success stories that we've got. And our biggest risk is the fact that they can get a wipeout on their crop, like this past season with El Nino, where a lot of them had no crop, and it was a total crop loss. So there we are busy working with government and with the land bank specifically, and to see if they can have a pilot project where they can subsidize an insurance scheme for the 1,500 hectares that these farmers are planting. And it's a high level talks, and we've made a lot of progress, and it seems to us that we will have a pilot project running this year.
Fantastic. That's good news.
Yeah, so that they can be insured
Yeah.
against climatic disasters. And the other nice thing is we've got one day at the end of the season, which is this year in September, which we call the Day of Celebration, when all the farmers get together, and then they get their prizes for the farmer with the best progress, with the cleanest seed, etc., etc. And it's interesting that so far the people that were doing the best were the ladies.
Okay.
That seems to be the
ladies
norm.
are very good farmers, you know, and also to see that there is a generation of emerging farmers, of black farmers that are now getting through. Like some of them are also third generation farmers, and the pride that they've got in their business, and the fact that they are growing and become independent and commercial. I mean, that's a very nice thing.
Yes.
So in the northwest area, we've got one of the farmers. His name is Mozart, and Mozart he bought his own combine, so he's actually now contracting for the other farmers.
Oh, clever.
To help them with their harvesting process. So Zamukele has become one of our flagships in terms of transformation and empowerment.
Fantastic, incredible, and what you were saying about the guy with the combine harvester, he's moved up the chain, as you were saying about diversification. He's actually gone a little bit further down the line. He's providing a service to the others. Wow.
And on that, the young people coming in, are those people that's growing the beans, the younger generation of theirs, are they also planning to get involved into it, or do they want to go to the bright lights of the city?
You know, some of them are born farmers, and I think it runs in their genes. So when they're born on a farm, they live off the land, they start to love the land, and they get a passion for farming. Those are the people that stay and that stick, and that will be the successful next generation. So a lot of them are actually involved in their family businesses. And I mean, the concept again is it's a family business. And there's a specific reason why they say, listen, that's my father has done that. And my father motivated me. And I want to be involved in this business to carry on with our family business.
Stunning. Well, we had the CRI symposium and we had a chat yesterday, or this morning. We said if you want to look at the health of the industry, you look at the young people in the room. And there's many young people here, which is very good.
It's super important because, you know, it's so obvious, it's so visible here that there are so many young people in the room. And I mean, that shows that there are young people in the citrus industry. And it's interesting to hear that you're saying this about the bean producers, that there are younger people coming through. It's imperative that there are younger people coming through. And then I can deflect the question back to you about Schoeman Boerdery. You are obviously going to be making place for the younger generation. When you look down the road to the future, what do you see?
Well, my favorite people is what I call the next gen. So the next generation has got a lot of special talented young people. They definitely are more advanced than our generation. They think differently. But they basically need our guidance and our leadership to coach them. And fortunately, they are coachable. And for the senior generation to realize how we must create space for them and how they must start to, how do we let go? How do we hand over? And my program is, I'm not going to, ek gaan nie aftree nie, ek gaan optree.
Okay.
So
Nice.
what it basically means, I'm not going to move back. I want to move upwards to create the space for the next generation to move in.
Yes.
And that is an ongoing process. But what's also interesting is that a lot of new generation people has done studies in total different areas, not necessarily agriculture. It could be accounting, it could be IT, it could be whatever the case may be. And they come back to agriculture because there's something special in agriculture which I say, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And I think one of it is to be part of the land. I mean, we're grounded. That's why I like coffee.
Ground. Love it.
So to be part of the land and to be part of this wonderful profession of agriculture.
Indeed.
One thing I've noticed, and you do have a certain presence over yourself, is that a lot of young people talk to you all the time. Whenever we see you in a crowd, there's always young people they're hanging on the words you're telling them, which is very inspiring. And
This has been our observation over the last 2 or 3 days being here. And I think for somebody like yourself who makes themselves available for people to chat to, it's wisdom that's been gained over years of experience, and it's invaluable. And if you are there for the next generation in your business and in the broader industry, it's fantastic. So it's quite a legacy.
Yeah, I think you've got 3 phases in your life, and it's the 3 phases are learn, earn, and return. Now you basically never stop learning. There's a formal period where you study and you learn, although it never stops. I still believe if you learn one thing per day, you will learn 365 things in a year. And then there's a period that you've got to focus on your earnings. And I always tell the younger people, please try never to be a burden for your family, for your community, and for your country. As jy nie 'n las gaan wees vir jou familie, en vir jou gemeenskap en vir die land nie, het jy klaar 'n verskil gemaak. You've made a contribution.
It's very
And
true.
that is why the earning period is important. And then you move into the phase where I am now, where you've got to return all the blessings you've had, all the experience that you've got, and all the tough times that you've also had.
Yes.
Because we've
Life's
had,
like that.
exactly.
It's not always good times.
So then you can actually say, listen, well, normally when people ask me, they've got a new idea and a new concept, I say, all right, let me listen to that. And I can give you my approval, but not my blessing. Because there's a difference between the
There certainly is.
Yeah. So go and think about it, because I see some pitfalls and I see some dangers which you haven't identified. And I always tend to put on some guardrails and say, don't fall over this, because that will be catastrophic. So when they come back and they say, listen, can I have your approval and your blessing? Then you know.
They really, really want to make it work.
So yes, go for it.
There you go.
So, a topic that's come up is what's happening in the country after the recent election. I think it's very young days, but it's so positive. The things that we've seen so far doesn't necessarily just be agriculture, but the way some of the new ministers, the new brooms are trying to sweep cleaner than old ones. So, have you got anything that you want to add about what's coming? What do you think?
Yeah, Dewald, I think the 29th of May was an historical moment in the history of South Africa, especially after our first 30 years of democracy. And we know that a lot of things went wrong, and we know that we're sitting in a desperate situation due to everything that was done wrong by the ANC. And I can say it now because the people have spoken.
Yes.
And there's no party with an absolute majority. And I think we've learned about the old South Africa. We've gone through the new South Africa. And now we are experiencing the real South Africa. And why I'm so optimistic about it is the fact that the leadership has realized that the people have spoken, and they've got to start to deliver and stop with just seeing what you can take out of the system and to see how you can steal and be corrupt, and this mentality of it's my turn to eat. So I think that has changed, and that the leadership has really understand that we've got to form this government of national unity. And the last month, we've had a lot of opportunity to talk to, well, our new Minister of Agriculture, for instance, our new Prime Minister of Limpopo, and some other people in Parliament. And I can see that they are trying not to be politicians as they used to be, and to just care about their party. And to build their party, but to really start to say, listen, we've got a bigger responsibility, and let's see how we can fix South Africa. And because we've got to turn the tide. Where we were heading was disastrous. And I can just feel there's an enthusiasm, people are more optimistic. And even from why is the Rand suddenly strengthening? There's a lot of reasons, but one of it is that people are saying, listen, let's look at South Africa. There is opportunities in South Africa. And even as far as foreign direct investment is concerned, the tide has changed, and I'm absolutely very optimistic about it. And I think what's also important is that we have really learned to adapt in South Africa, and that the fact that we are still here, I mean, the toughest people are still here in South Africa, and we are the creative people. And we are the people that don't get scared of nothing. We are, and you know what? We were born in Africa. I'm the 11th generation in South Africa. So you cannot scare me. I've seen it all. And you don't need to be the victim of your environment. You can be the architect of your environment. And that is my message to the next generation. And I can see that they are optimistic and they are creative and they're not scared and say, listen, yes, let's rather be the architect of our environment and of our future. And that gives me a lot of hope. And I think hope was a scarce commodity in South Africa.
Oh, yes. What's that saying? You've got was the Japanese word or Chinese word for hope and
I think I speak under correction, but I've heard that the Japanese word for disaster is the same as opportunity. So in other words, when there's a disaster, there's opportunity in that. So we hope that we have gone past the disaster and we're onto the opportunity side of things.
And if it's not Japanese, please correct us for the people listening.
Yes.
Yes. I also think people start to realize that, listen, and I believe the politicians also got that message, is that in order to get to a win-win situation, there must be some form of compromise. And in a government of national unity, everything will be about compromise. Mm-hmm. So you'll have to understand that you need for both parties to lose-lose in order to get to a win-win. Mm-hmm. And I hope that my observation is correct as far as that is concerned.
Well, it's looking very good. It is very hopeful. We just hope that they'll stay the path and that it will continue that way.
In the beginning of the year, I was in Limpopo and I spent some time with young people up there. And this is obviously before the election, and the topic of election came up while we were busy driving. Yeah. And the young girl said to me, no, we're not voting. We're not going to vote. And I said, but why not? She says, my parents don't vote.
Oh, yes.
So I said, if you don't vote, you can't complain about all these stuffed up roads you're driving on. You cannot complain about the load shedding. You need to, if you want to make a change, you need to vote. Mm-hmm. So what I saw there, and it was with a small handful of people, I think they lost that hope. They were just so used of, we just need to fight, we need to get through today, tomorrow's the next day, we figure it out. But I think now, with things slowly changing, they might see that flicker of hope. And then hopefully by the next election that they will go to the polls and vote.
Mm. True.
So we are currently at the Citrus Research International Symposium, which is something that happens every 2 years. And it's a place where the citrus industry has the opportunity to transfer knowledge and information about what they are doing, what the scientists are doing for the citrus industry. You've been attending it with us here for the last 2 days. Tell us about how you perceive their role and please elaborate.
Well, first of all, I think it's a venue that makes a big difference. It's one of the most beautiful places in South Africa, and that's in the Champagne Castle in Drakensberg. And I also had the privilege to play in the golf day on Sunday, and I think this golf course is one of the most beautiful golf courses in South Africa, and it is the most difficult golf course in South Africa as well. But I mean, it's an opportunity to network with industry people, with farmers, and also with international researchers. This is a very technical conference which actually focus on I think the main thing for citrus going forward. The Citrus Growers Association has got this Vision 260, which say that by 2030 we are going to produce 260 million cartons of citrus. So where on earth are we going to market that? Who is going to buy the citrus? Will we be competitive? How are we going to develop markets going forward? And that is one of the mandates of the CRI, Citrus Growers Association. And the feedback that we got during this conference was positive. And I think they really focus on market access, and it's not that easy. Because they see South Africa as we are the second largest citrus exporter in the world, and some of our competitors in the Northern Hemisphere consider us as opposition, and they are really fighting very hard to get us out of their market. And everybody knows about the long-going case against citrus black spot and now citrus fruit fly. And there's a whole court case going on with the World Trade Organization to see what they can do about it. But the barriers of entry, and I think it's happening with all sorts of commodities, agricultural commodities, the barriers of entry are getting higher. It's not getting easier. And therefore, we need to have an organization that represents the industry, which CGA is doing. And as far as market access is concerned, there's still a long way to go. And what is also important is we need the government to intervene, because it's always multinational agreements from government to government. And that's why I'm quite happy about our new Minister of Agriculture. And we've had discussions with him recently in terms of his responsibility and what our concerns is and what his department's responsibility is. And I think there will be a little bit more energy going towards bilateral agreements and
That'll be good.
And market access.
Especially if we can get things moving quicker. What was the last one? The lemons took how long? 11 years? Pears took 14 or 15 years.
Yeah, it's crazy.
To get the protocol signed. If those things can just be sped up and made quicker, it will also help.
Yeah. Along with that, I think biosecurity is one of the major threats that we've got in the citrus industry, especially as far as the Asian greening virus is concerned. And there was a lot of lectures and feedbacks on the research that has been done, and especially to trace where the virus is in Africa. Because I think we can delay it. I don't think that it will be possible to stop it, because it normally enters a country by some or other means, and it could be by plant material, it could be by the vector that can actually also move. So there's and that could be a disaster for the citrus industry.
Yeah, indeed.
And I'm quite happy that what the CRI is doing to monitor it, first of all, and to make sure that we exactly try to understand where it's coming for us. How can we stop it? So I think that's the other important thing.
Yeah.
Indeed.
No, we've had some fascinating, even like something like yesterday where they spoke about the pallets being packed.
Yeah.
Just by switching it up, you avoid the shaking. So it is really interesting.
Research on so many fields within the citrus industry, things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, and we have found it very interesting. And I would imagine that other people attending, like yourself and others, have found it fascinating. So
yeah, it's the other focus area, and that's part of the mandate of the Citrus Growers Association is all the pressure that we experience from the consumer and from consumer groups and from the retail in terms of food safety, healthy food, less chemicals, less pesticides, integrated pest management. That is a huge focus in order to manage that risk, because that could be one of our biggest problems in market access.
Indeed.
And we've got to have the let's say the brand name of South African citrus as being responsible farmers, responsible producers, and trying to care for food security, food health, and also for the land that we're living in.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we just said. We need to convert all of these challenges into opportunities.
Yeah.
Like the lady with the dog. Establish stuff in South Africa that could benefit the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing a fantastic job.
You mentioned the lady with the dog. The dog is trained to sniff, smell out, and detect false codling moth, which is an incredible thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Is there anything that you'd like to finish with? Is there any last message?
I would like to say my message would be to the citrus farmers of South Africa. And we are a bit reluctant to pay the levy, which is it's not a voluntary levy, it's a statutory levy, and it's a lot of money. But after the 2.5 days that I spent here at the CRI conference, I am satisfied that our money is spent wisely and that we are making an investment in terms of the future of our citrus industry. So let's pay the levy and we will get the results. And well done for Citrus Growers Association and for the CRI as well.
We've got a closing tradition, last one, where we ask the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest. And it can be anybody, and it can be anything, and we're going to get one from you. And one of the last questions we got was, what is your ideal day? Once you wake up in the morning, what is your ideal day like?
My ideal day is when I wake up in the morning and the sky is clear and I can get into my aeroplane and fly from Delmas to Hopetown. You know, people normally say that the sky is the limit, but for me, the sky is home. I love flying.
Wow.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Ek het nou vragtig, jy het my nou flippend vasgevra. Ek moes nou so vinnig dink.
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are done.